The morning began like all the others, quiet, precise, forgettable. He left his apartment at 7:12 a.m., locking the door twice out of habit, not fear. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and old paint. Somewhere above him, a radio murmured the news through a thin wall, the announcer's voice too calm for the list of things going wrong in the world. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, counting steps without realizing it, his mind already ticking through meetings, emails, deadlines. Outside, the city was damp from an early rain. The sky hung low and gray, pressing down on the buildings as if it expected something from them. He pulled his coat tighter and walked to his car, a sensible sedan he'd bought for reliability, not love. The engine started on the first try. That pleased him more than it should have. Traffic was thick but moving. Brake lights glowed like a red river stretching ahead. He kept the radio off, preferring the muted rhythm of driving, the soft whir of tires, the click of the turn signal, the predictable rules of lanes and lights. Predictable meant safe. Predictable meant controllable. At a stoplight near the old shopping district, he noticed her for the first time. She stood on the median, thin and still, holding a piece of cardboard with black marker words that had bled into the soggy paper. Anything helps. The phrase barely registered. He'd seen it 100 times, in 100 different hands. Usually, he looked away. Not out of cruelty, out of helplessness. He never knew where to put the feeling that came with seeing people like her. The light stayed red. The line of cars stalled. She moved closer, approaching vehicles one by one. Some drivers stared straight ahead. Others shook their heads. A few pretended to be very interested in their phones. When she reached his car, she stopped. He felt the moment land on him, heavier than it should have. He told himself it was coincidence. Timing. Nothing more. She wasn't old, he noticed. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Her coat had once been navy blue but had faded into something colorless. One sleeve was patched with mismatched fabric. Her hair, dark and uneven, was pulled back loosely, strands escaping to frame her face. There was dirt under her fingernails, but her hands didn't shake. She didn't knock. She just stood there, patient, as if she understood how fragile a driver's attention could be. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. Still early. He reached for the loose change in the cup holder, then paused. Something about the way she looked at the cars, not desperate, not pleading, made him hesitate. Her eyes tracked faces, not wallets. He lowered the window halfway. The sound of the city rushed in, engines, distant voices, the hiss of tires on wet pavement. She leaned slightly toward the opening, careful to keep her distance. "Morning," she said. Her voice caught him off guard. It wasn't flat or rehearsed. Just normal. "Morning," he replied, surprising himself. He handed her a few coins. They clinked softly into her palm. She nodded in thanks, but her gaze lingered on him a second longer than necessary. Her eyes flicked from his face to the dashboard, to the passenger seat, then back again, as if something there didn't quite add up. The light stayed red. He felt an odd pressure behind his ribs, a sensation he couldn't name. He told himself it was guilt. Or caffeine. Or nothing at all. She stepped back, turning slightly toward the next car, but not fully leaving. For reasons he didn't understand, he watched her instead of the road ahead. That was when the feeling sharpened, subtle, insistent. Like recognizing a song you haven't heard in years, playing faintly through a wall. He swallowed, unaware that the smallest shift in an ordinary morning had already begun. The light finally turned green, but he didn't move right away. The car behind him honked, sharp, irritated. He flinched and eased forward, letting the flow of traffic carry him through the intersection. In the rearview mirror, the woman shrank back onto the median, already turning toward another row of cars, already becoming just another shape in a familiar city scene. And yet, his foot felt heavier on the accelerator than usual. The road ahead blurred at the edges, buildings sliding past like props instead of places. He told himself to focus. He always focused. That was how he stayed ahead, how he kept his life neatly arranged and mostly untroubled. Still, her face stayed with him. At the next light, he stopped again. This one was longer, bordered by a shuttered grocery store and a bus stop with a cracked bench. His hands rested on the steering wheel, thumbs brushing a worn spot in the leather. He tried to recall what, exactly, had caught his attention. It wasn't just that she'd looked at him, people did that sometimes. It was the way she'd looked through him, as if checking a memory against reality. He shook his head, exhaling. "You're tired," he told himself. That's all. The radio flicked on with a burst of static. He didn't remember touching it. A talk show host laughed too loudly, then cut to a commercial. He turned it off again, more forcefully than necessary. The bus stop came alive as passengers climbed aboard, blocking his view of the median behind him. He felt an unexpected flicker of disappointment, quickly followed by annoyance at himself. This was ridiculous. He had a presentation in 40 minutes. Coffee waiting on his desk. A whole day already spoken for. The light changed. He drove on. 2 blocks later, traffic slowed again, funneled into a single lane by orange cones and a blinking arrow sign. Construction. He groaned softly and checked the clock. He drummed his fingers, then stopped when he realized he was doing it in the same uneven rhythm he used to tap on a cafeteria table, years ago, waiting for someone who was always late. The thought landed harder than it should have. He frowned, searching his mind for the source of the memory. A cafeteria. Long tables. The smell of overcooked vegetables. A girl across from him, swinging her legs, daring him to trade desserts. The image was faint, like a photograph left too long in the sun. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Where had that come from? Traffic crept forward. On the sidewalk to his right, he caught a flash of navy blue fabric. His head turned before he could stop it. There she was again. She walked along the row of stalled cars, slower now, shoulders slightly hunched against the chill. The cardboard sign was tucked under her arm, as if she'd given up on it for the moment. She wasn't asking anyone for anything. She was just walking, eyes down, lips moving silently, counting steps or rehearsing words or praying. He couldn't tell. His pulse picked up. This time, he didn't look away. As she passed his car, she glanced up, almost absently, and their eyes met. The contact was brief, no more than a second, but it hit him like a misstep on a dark stair. Something in her expression shifted, the practiced distance cracking just enough to reveal surprise. Recognition. No, not yet, but something close. She slowed, then stopped. The space between them felt charged, stretched thin. He became acutely aware of the glass separating them, the way reflections layered his face over hers. His hand hovered near the window controls. Don't, he told himself. Just drive. The car behind him honked again. The moment wavered. She looked away first, stepping toward the next vehicle as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But his heart didn't slow. As traffic finally began to move, one thought repeated, steady and unsettling. I've seen her before. He just didn't know where, or why. The certainty felt like the beginning of something he'd spent years trying not to remember. By the time he reached the next intersection, his sense of time had thinned, stretched. The city no longer felt like a series of streets he knew by heart, but like a maze subtly rearranging itself while he moved through it. He slowed as the light ahead turned yellow, then red, easing to a stop with a faint hiss of brakes. She was there again. This time, she stood closer to his lane, no median between them, just a narrow strip of cracked asphalt and a gutter clogged with wet leaves. The cardboard sign was back in her hands. She held it low, almost apologetically, as if unsure whether to lift it at all. His first instinct was irritation. At the city, at the coincidence, at himself. He rolled his shoulders, trying to release the tension coiling there. This was nothing. People moved. Lights changed. Paths crossed. That was all. And yet, his eyes betrayed him, tracking her as she approached. She stopped 2 cars ahead, then one. A man in a delivery van waved her off without looking. A woman in a compact car shook her head, lips tight. The beggar nodded at both, unfazed, stepping back each time with the same careful distance. When she reached his car again, she hesitated. He noticed it immediately, the half-step pause, the way her gaze flicked to his face and stayed there, longer than politeness required. Her brows drew together, not in confusion, but in concentration, as if she were trying to align 2 images that refused to match. His chest tightened. She raised the sign. Up close, he could see the marker strokes, heavy and uneven, letters rewritten where the cardboard had softened from rain. Anything helps. The words felt suddenly inadequate, like a script neither of them quite believed in anymore. He reached for his wallet, then stopped. His fingers hovered uselessly over the leather. Her eyes dropped to his hands, then lifted again. A question lived there, not spoken, but present. Not will you give, but do you know me? The thought startled him. He lowered the window a few inches. The sound of the city poured in, engines idling, a distant siren, someone laughing on the sidewalk. The cold brushed his knuckles. "Hi," she said. Again, that normal voice. No performance. No plea. "Hi," he echoed, his own voice rougher than he expected. They studied each other in silence. He became aware of details he'd missed before, a faint scar near her left eyebrow, the way she favored one leg when she shifted her weight, the steadiness with which she held herself, as if balance had once been important to her. A memory stirred. A gymnasium. The squeak of sneakers. A girl laughing as she lost her footing, then springing back up, defiant. He frowned, shaken by the clarity of it. "You don't have to," she said suddenly, gesturing toward his wallet. "I know the look." "What look?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. She smiled, just a little. "The one where you're deciding whether you'll feel worse if you give something or if you don't." The accuracy of it disarmed him. He let out a short breath. "I was just." He trailed off. He didn't know how to finish the sentence without sounding foolish. Her gaze softened, then shifted, scanning his face again. Her lips parted, as if she were about to say something else. Instead, she shook her head once, subtle and firm, as though rejecting a thought. "I'm sorry," she said. "Have a good day." She stepped back before he could respond. The light stayed red. He watched her turn away, watched the slight hitch in her step, the way she squared her shoulders as she approached the next car. An unreasonable urge rose in him, to call out, to stop her, to demand an explanation for the echo pounding in his chest. He didn't. Instead, he did something even stranger. He put the car in park. The decision felt both reckless and inevitable, like stepping off a curb without looking because some part of you already knows the street will be empty. As the engine idled and the city pressed in, he realized this wasn't about charity or coincidence anymore. Whatever he was circling, whatever memory was circling him, it was close now. Close enough to look back. The traffic light hovered red above them, unwavering, as if it had decided this moment deserved to last. He had rolled the window all the way down now. Cold air spilled into the car, sharp with rain and exhaust, but he barely felt it. The woman stood close enough that he could see the fine cracks in her chapped lips, the faint tremor she tried, and failed, to hide in her hands. Up close, the resemblance was no longer a whisper. It was a shout. Her eyes were the first thing. That impossible green, bright even in the dull light of the overcast morning. He had seen those eyes reflected in bathroom mirrors while brushing his teeth, had watched them roll in exaggerated boredom during lectures, had seen them flash with anger the day everything fell apart. His breath stalled. She noticed. Her posture shifted, shoulders drawing back, defenses sliding into place. "Sir," she said carefully, "if you're not giving anything." "Lena," he said. The name left him quietly, but it detonated between them. She froze. Not the polite pause of someone used to rejection, but a full, instinctive stillness, like an animal that has heard a sound it recognizes but doesn't want to believe. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the cardboard sign until it bent. "I think you've made a mistake," she said, too quickly. But her eyes betrayed her. They searched his face with sudden urgency, skimming over his hairline, his jaw, the faint crease between his brows. Recognition flickered there, dim, frightened, undeniable. He swallowed hard. "You used to hate your name," he said, voice barely steady. "You said it sounded like it belonged to someone braver." Her breath caught. "Just once. Enough." "That's not funny," she whispered. "I know." His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening. "You broke your arm when you were 12 trying to jump the quarry fence. You blamed me because I dared you." Her head shook slowly now. "Stop. You always said you'd forgive me for that," he went on, words tumbling out before fear could stop them. "You said someday. Just, not yet." The cardboard slipped from her hands and landed softly against his door. For a moment, the noise of the city swelled, horns blaring, an engine revving, someone shouting from the sidewalk. The light blinked yellow, then red again, trapping him inside the sound. Her voice, when it came, was smaller, stripped of its practiced calm. "You shouldn't say those things." "Why?" he asked. "Because they're wrong. Because they're true," she said, and closed her eyes. The words hollowed him out. She opened her eyes again and looked straight at him. Not through him this time. At him. Years pressed into that look, years he hadn't lived, hadn't protected her through. I'm not that person anymore, she said. I can't be. I'm not asking you to be, he said quickly. I thought you were gone. We all did. A muscle jumped in her jaw. Some people don't get to disappear cleanly. Silence stretched, thick and fragile. He noticed a thin scar along her wrist, pale against her skin, and forced himself not to stare. There were questions crowding his mouth, all of them too sharp. Behind him, a car leaned on its horn, long and furious. She flinched and took a step back, as if the sound had snapped whatever fragile bridge had formed between them. I can't do this, she said. Not here. Then tell me where, he said, panic edging in. Please. She hesitated, eyes flicking to the street, the crowd, the impatient line of cars. Finally, she bent down, scooped up her sign, and met his gaze one last time. I'm not who I used to be, she repeated softly. But neither are you. Then she stepped away, melting into the flow of pedestrians as the light finally turned green. He sat there long after the cars surged forward, heart pounding, the echo of her voice filling the space she'd left behind. This time, he didn't doubt it. The past hadn't just caught up to him. It had stopped, looked him in the eye, and walked away.